All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Theory and Theology. On this podcast, we talk about spirituality and different theories and kind of some food for thought, cultural topics, religion. I'm going to take it kind of on a bit of a psychological tangent today. Maybe it's not a tangent, maybe it is, but I don't think this is something I'm experiencing right now, but I know a lot of people who are. Like, it's kind of interesting with the topic of like gaslighting. I'm kind of noticing a lot of people lately experiencing this, unfortunately. Like, I don't even mean to laugh about it, but it's just kind of like interesting how I think I've probably had within the last, let me see, it's Tuesday today, since probably within the last week, since about Tuesday last week, I've probably had at least maybe almost 10 instances where I've either read like a Facebook post from someone I know, or people just kind of telling about their week with stuff that happens, or even at work, people like explaining memories of situations, like not even clients, I'm talking like staff and clients, having memories of situations like from the recent past, about like kind of about gaslighting overall. I mean, it's not really like a theory of belief necessarily. I think it's just kind of like a habit, a bad habit. So sometimes when I start seeing like bad habits that I notice are becoming like almost like a trend, it's like a sick trend. It's kind of weird, but I start to kind of notice, there's definitely more than one side to things. So, say for example, there's a person, usually most people, it's going to be a boss, a partner, a teacher, a parent, like usually someone in a role where they're kind of like you're kind of under them a little bit, or usually where you're kind of like, there's supposed to be some kind of dynamic where, people are supposed to be in like a trusting relationship, like, partners, friendships, whatever that may be. And one thing I've noticed is that, the person that is usually, doing this, behavior of like just trying to lie their way out of something. Like, I don't really know if they even really know what they're doing. Like I started looking at it just for what it is. So say for example, if you're maybe younger, for example, and you have a curfew, I'm just making up an example, and you come home and your parents like, you're grounded because, I told you to come home at this time and you didn't come home at that time. And for a fact that you and your parent have a calendar where you post when you're going to be out of the house and when you're going to be coming back, and then, I don't know, they approve it or something. And so, say in this case, the parent is like, oh, I just, that my phone was acting weird and I just didn't have, I didn't want to go into the computer, so I told you by word of mouth. That's always one thing that I kind of notice. I'm not saying that this example even happened to me at all, but one thing I notice about people that are gaslighting others is they usually know there's no proof, right? They always go to this word of mouth, right? They go to this word of mouth, he said, she said kind of thing. Like, no, you don't remember what I said. You don't remember this correctly. And they try to put like a bit of doubt in another person's mind. Now, what I don't understand is if the person who's doing the gaslighting, if they believe themselves when they're saying this, because I think they want to believe themselves. They want it to be true, and they're trying to like protect themselves from seeming wrong. They'd rather seem right to the extent of firing someone or grounding someone or trying to win an argument with someone, or reprimanding someone out of the wrong. Like, they're not even in the right doing that, and they know that they're not. I'm guessing that they know that they're not, but I feel like they're almost trying to trick themselves because they don't want to be wrong. And then there's kind of more phases to this. Like, I've noticed, like, usually after a situation like that, like, the other person is feeling bad because they're like, man, I have no proof of this, even though I know that I'm right and that boss or that parent or whatever is wrong. Right? So they get stuck in this kind of like, okay, he said, she said kind of thing. I know I'm right, but they're in charge of me. They have some kind of power over me where they can just, their word is like gold compared to mine. So it puts you in a weird position because it's like they know you can't really fight back. And if you do fight back, you'll get fired or you'll get grounded more, or you're the one who's going to have to bear the consequences of sticking up for yourself. So they're aware of this. So they know they can get away with it. Usually, if it's really not a big deal, it's going to blow over. It's going to just be like something in the wind. And another thing that I noticed, this is something that I noticed, right? Usually when it happens in, say, like a work setting where a boss says one thing and then the employee is like, no, you never said that, I wonder, I'm like, okay, as a boss, if this thing that the boss is mentioning is really an issue, if it's really a problem, aren't they concerned that their employee is so, like, absent-minded about something? For example, if there's a calendar at work and they usually send you your schedule and then, by text or email, and you don't get the text or email, and then they say, you were supposed to work yesterday. And you're like, no, I wasn't. I never got a text or email. And they're like, I told you this on Friday. And you're like, well, there's no proof of text in my phone. There's no proof of emails in my account, and, they're not going to let you see their phone or their outgoing emails, their sent emails, just to prove, because they can't prove it. If they never did it, they can't prove it, right? So that's one thing. They're not going to show you proof if it's not there, because it doesn't exist, and they're not going to try to resolve it by showing you the proof. Another thing is, they're not going to take a formal approach, right? If you do really miss a shift at work, usually something's going to happen, like usually they're going to sit down with you and be like, look, this is not acceptable, so it's kind of weird, right? There's always this kind of weirdness about it. Not always, but a lot of times I notice there's a bit of a weirdness about it where it's like, well, if you really missed a shift, and this isn't even something that happened to me, but I'm just saying, for example, if you really missed a shift and your boss is just like, just don't do it again, and you know that you didn't miss a shift because they never told you to work that day, they never told you by mouth, and then you clearly never got a text or email, and then they're not going to try to prove to you that they sent you one they don't have a receipt of proof of anything. And so they're just going to go by their word. Again, something that you can't prove unless you're just like having an audio recorder on all the time. You can't prove what they said or didn't say. And if you weren't even in the office that day that they said that they told you, it's like, well, how did you tell me then? Exactly how did you get me this message when I wasn't even there? And, you never sent me anything. So things like that, right? It's kind of like things that in the moment you're not going to think about it because you're going to be so upset by being wronged that you're not going to think about kind of like the logic behind it. Why would a boss keep somebody on and not really have like a formal complaint against an employee missing shifts and things? It's like, why would they just keep you hired and keep you working if you just didn't show up to work? Right? Like, that's weird. Is that not weird? To me, that's kind of weird. Usually that would be like they give you some kind of formal warning or sit down with you and be like, look, what's up? You're usually a good worker. Why are you missing days? So that's one other thing that I notice. And then another thing that I notice, is that they usually try to treat you a little bad afterwards, just to kind of keep you in your place, in the place that they want you anyways, because they know they're in the wrong and they did something wrong. So they want to kind of prevent you from feeling like you have any kind of power or authority in a situation. And so they kind of want to do that. They want to, take little jabs at you or keep an extra eye on you. Like, they get very, just kind of, focused. They treat you differently than they treat other people. That's one thing you'll notice. Like, it can be subtle too. It doesn't have to be like some major thing where they're like aggressively, actively attacking you. It can be as simple as you notice everything that you say, they kind of like jump on it and they're like, oh, that's not like good enough, or that's not right, or that can't be accurate. And you're contributing, like, say, in meetings at work, and they're kind of like, oh, well, pointing out, like, how you did something wrong here or how that's not right there. But then you notice they're not like that with everybody else. They're just, focused on the little wrong things that you do, or the things that you do that aren't perfect. Usually that tends to happen right after the fact, for a while, maybe even. And it seems like the bigger the issue is, the longer that kind of goes on for. Can you tell that I know what I'm talking about? But yeah, it's just unfortunate. But I mean, I think, those things might sound subtle, but sometimes you have to protect your own self if it does come down to keeping an audio recorder with you when you're having to interact with this person, and just keep your phone on record in your pocket. It's like, I know every interaction I had with this person was recorded. I mean, it sounds maybe stupid, but it's like, sometimes if it's the difference between you keeping a job or not, or something like that, you don't want to have to be like, put in a place where somebody thinks they can get over on you because they know that they're just going to do this he said, she said thing to get their needs met, of not feeling like they made a mistake. And I feel like internally, those people need to really work on themselves. They need to work on whatever the heck it is that's making it so that they're forgetful, or that they can't, get it together to do what they need to do, so that they don't have to be in a place of blaming others and wrongfully blaming others and lying about others, to make themselves feel like they're right. I think that's kind of more so where it is that they notice, I can't really manage myself. The only way I can manage myself, because I'm making all these mistakes, is to kind of blame it on other people and then put them down so that they don't feel empowered within themselves to kind of, within themselves to kind of be able to, function properly or whatever. They take all their dysfunctional energy of like not being able to remember calendars, not being able to tell their staff that, this is where you need to work. You can tell they're kind of like disorganized in some processes that they have to do, and they're usually that way because something else is going on that they're not really able to manage, and it all kind of trickles down to the gaslighting process. And I'm not saying that's an excuse for them or that it's right that they do it that way, because it's not right. But there's kind of like a whole dynamic to it. There's more to it than that, but in a nutshell, that's kind of what I notice. Those are kind of patterns to kind of look out for. It's like usually you'll notice this person is like totally in a frantic time in their life. They're disorganized. They're doing all kinds of weird stuff. And, they might not only be doing this to you, they might be doing it only to you. It's hard to really tell. But usually you'll notice they treat you differently afterwards compared to other people. If you have other people to compare it to, you'll notice that like even something as subtle as like whatever you say in a meeting or something, they're going to try to make you feel a little bit negative. They're never going to build you up. They're never going to be like, hey, that's a good idea, let's implement that. They're going to be like, no, and point out all the flaws that they see and stuff. Because that's going to keep you quiet, right? It's going to keep you from talking. You're not going to keep speaking up and trying to like, contribute and have any kind of like say in anything in a company or in a classroom or in a relationship or in a, with your household, with your parent and stuff like that. You're never gonna, try to speak up when somebody keeps trying to like shut you down on stuff. Because that doesn't feel good. You eventually are just like, okay, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut even if I have a good idea, right? They don't want you to be acknowledged as having good ideas. They kind of almost want to paint you in a negative light. And, there's way more to it than what I'm mentioning. But, I mean, it's kind of what I'm noticing off the surface is, like, this is the kind of stuff that you see in the patterns in these situations. It's not usually just this person lied about this thing and then said that I didn't do this right, or said that they told me this thing, or said something that didn't really happen. That's not usually what it is. It's not isolated. There's usually stuff happening before. There's usually stuff happening during. Usually the way that they handle it doesn't make any sense. A parent grounding their kid for missing a curfew, that might be normal. But, for example, like, sometimes it's like it might not even come to that. Like the logic of how they handle the situation that they're lying about doesn't really equal, how they would normally need to handle that situation. And that's another sign that just shows that they know that they're wrong. And so, otherwise they would follow through with the whole thing. They would follow through and make it known. But that's kind of, I have plenty more to say about this, but I'll try to keep it short because it's morning. And, but yeah, I hope that's helpful. I just wish there was more like, what do you call it? Like support for people who have those experiences on a regular basis. But a lot of times it does come from someone in a power position. And that's unfortunate. They're abusing their power. And the way I see it really is that they're abusing their power because they don't have things managed, and they don't want to just come forth and be like, look, I'm struggling. I'm having a hard time. My sleep is affected. So when I wake up, I'm just like not really too focused. And then I'm forgetting things with my employees. They're not going to come and tell everybody that. They're not usually going to come and tell everybody that. A good boss might. They might not be like oversharing and like across boundaries and stuff, but a good boss might actually just be pretty open about it, just to be like, look, we all struggle with energy, or we all struggle with, just keeping things on track or whatever. But yeah, usually it does come from something like that. Like they have something that's unmanaged in their lives, and they're taking it out on other people because they can't manage themselves. And that's the only defense that they're willing to use. They're not willing to be more proactive and, get themselves in a position where they're not doing that anymore. They would rather take a short, crappy route of gaslighting others, and then continuing to make them feel negative. Even if it's not like super deeply negative, it can be something as subtle as like somebody just disagreeing with you on the spot about like your ideas in front of like a group of staff, just so that you know that you don't really feel like you want to contribute anymore. And once you stop contributing, and once you kind of just stop interacting with them, you'll kind of notice it kind of goes away. But they don't want you to kind of be speaking up after they just like gaslight you. It doesn't, they don't want you to do that. So look out for those things. I mean, if it gets worse, it's really like a form of harassment, but it's unfortunately too common. It's something that I'm noticing is more common as the economy is going wild, as people are just not really feeling good as far as like finances and things like that. Everybody's got their own problems these days. I mean, everyone already did, but now it's like everything's like super magnified. So I feel like a lot of these problems are becoming worse because like, the power dynamics really are shifting because people's livelihood is getting way more affected. It's at the point where people can't even properly afford groceries right now sometimes. And so if you can't even properly afford groceries, of course someone's going to try to get over on a person, just to get that need met of like, well, I need to still appear superior. I could be wrong. People can tell me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of how I see it. And I've seen it a lot, and it's very unfortunate, and it seems to be coming up a lot more. I've been actively avoiding and ignoring talking to quite a lot of people. Like, not, that sounds really bad. I don't mean it like in a mean way. It's just for myself. I've been trying to like balance my own things in my own life. So I've been pretty limited in my social interactions, probably a lot of the month of August. Just to kind of work on the podcast and do my own creative stuff, and not really, sometimes I just don't want to engage with the mainstream world and just like generally just with anybody. I'm happy in my own head sometimes, or even if I'm not, I want to just work on that. And so I do just kind of tend to disappear like that. It's fine. That works for me. Sometimes I need to just be regulating my own energy and stuff. And so, that works for me. But, like, I have noticed, even as isolated as I have forced myself to be, I'm still noticing people bringing this topic up a lot more frequently than what I've ever noticed before. So that's why I was like, let me just record about this, because it's, if I'm noticing it when I'm not even really engaging with hardly anybody, like I'm kind of just like, if people reach out and they want to talk, then I'll talk. Other than that, I haven't really been like reaching out too much to like actively just be like, hey, let me call this person up or whatever. Like I've been kind of like I kind of have my priority people. And then outside of that, I'm kind of like, I'm not really my normal self. The last couple, like 2 to 3 weeks, I've been just kind of doing my own thing. Because I had to. And so, but yeah, I hope it's not coming across as like a whole negative episode, but some topics it's really hard to like try to spin in like a a positive way. But keep an eye out, watch out for yourself, watch your own back. It's pretty sad that it has to come to that, I mean, it doesn't have to, but it's sad when people who do the negative things don't really notice where it's coming from, or don't care to slow down, or don't feel like they can have any control in their own life. And so then they spiral out of control. And gaslighting may seem subtle, but if somebody does it once, they can do it again and again. I would say if you've been in a situation with someone where they've done it once, try to see if you can find something within your power, within your own legal power, to be able to protect yourself, because if they know they can get away with it and you don't see them getting better at managing the stuff in their life, they're not taking days where they're just kind of like going on a little vacation, or like doing their own thing for their own health, or like changing up an exercise routine or whatever, or like nutrition or anything like that. If you don't notice them like changing something, then chances are it's going to continue, and it might continue in your direction, unfortunately. But yeah, sometimes when the problem is somebody else, it's going to become your problem, and it's going to heavily become your problem. And that is just, it's unfortunate. It doesn't have to be like that, but I think sometimes people want like a quick solution, a quick fix, and that's the way that they choose to fix their problems, is to just put them on other people, and then try to shut them down after the fact, to try to keep themselves looking, nice and, fancy and superior and amazing. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We don't all, power through every day all the time. We all have like times where we need to slow down, or notice when we need to take breaks, or, there's no shame in that. Like, and I think sometimes some people who are bosses, or in a, position where they're above others in that way, like, I think sometimes they don't notice, that, they need to manage themselves, and stop blaming things on other people, and stop trying to like make it seem like other people are doing things wrong, or stop making those situations, happen where they're gaslighting others. Like, there is, I think those examples show that there is like a method to it, but I don't think people are thinking it out like that. But, this is more so for the people who are, experiencing the gaslighting from someone else. But if it happens to be that you are a person gaslighting others, I would say just take into consideration why you're doing it. It's probably a deeper thing than just like, yeah, I really do think that I thought that. Like, you can tell yourself that you think you thought something for a long time, and start to believe it. Like, it doesn't make it true, and I'm not even in a bad mood. Maybe this is coming across that way, but yeah, I'm just kind of recording on this because it's coming up so much. I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, but yeah, I feel for people. I hope that on all ends, people can find ways. People are having to find different methods to manage their issues these days. As the world is changing so much around us, it's like the same methods might not be working anymore. Change it. Change it up. Find something that does work for you, and then that's gonna work for everybody else too. So, yeah, but I mean, people can get through it. They can get past it. But it's not a lifestyle. Gaslighting people isn't a lifestyle. It's not a solution. And being in a situation where somebody's gaslighting you, that's also not a lifestyle. It's not a solution. You're not stuck in it. It might feel like you are, but you're not. A lot of times we forget that we have a lot more control in situations than we think we do. We forget to consider our options, our legal options. I'm not saying take some kind of weird, vindictive measure and like do some illegal thing, like, slashing tires or something. Like, don't go to some weird length just to make yourself feel better. You don't want to stoop to that level. You do want to be able to protect yourself, and you need to find methods to be able to protect yourself, to be able to understand protocols. One thing that I do it really, I think it drives bosses insane. But I mean, sometimes when I know I'm in the right, and I mean, I kind of take a more it's kind of the passive aggressive side in me that does this. But I'm kind of like, okay, if you're going to put me in a position where you're going to start saying that I did something that I didn't do, or I said something that I didn't say, or that you said something that you didn't say, and you're gonna, start complaining to me that I didn't do something that I clearly knew that I clearly didn't even know, because you never told me. When it comes to something along those lines, usually I'm like, okay, I will approach it as if I really did something wrong. And I have literally done this. I've literally been like, I see that, I saw the email you sent, about the thing that you said that I did. I'd like to take time to sit down and talk about this. And I will literally schedule an appointment to come into the office and sit down and be like, can you put this in writing? Can you do this? Can you do that? Like, I know it sounds like pretty stupid, but it's like, usually it's like, it's kind of my way of calling out the whole, like, I know what you're doing, and I'm going to treat this as if you're right. I'm going to give you this one. I'll give you this one, but just so you know, this is the one that you get, because I'm paying attention. You know what I mean? I'm not just going to be like, okay, roll over, like, oh shoot, like, they have more control over this situation than I do. It's like, no, as an employee, as a child, as a student, whatever it may be, you still do have power over things. I mean, it might not go your way. You still might get fired. You still might get kicked out, whatever. But it's like, sometimes, that is a method, to just be like, oh, I missed a shift, and I see that we don't, see similar on this, or I wouldn't even word it that way. I would be like, I just want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I wouldn't ever even acknowledge that I missed a shift. I would say, I want to make sure we don't get ourselves in this situation again. I'm trying to be proactive. Let's have a meeting about this, and you can put it in writing, that we had a meeting about if, this happens again, like trying to be like, okay, well, if I don't send the confirmation back that I got the schedule, put something like that out there, where it's like, okay, I'm taking an extra measure so that you can't say that I didn't get something next time, or so that you can't say that I said this next time. Find a solution to, take some kind of action on your end, so that they can't keep blaming you for stuff. And if they're not willing to take it, that's already a sign. If they're not willing to sit down with you, if they're like, oh, I'm too busy to do this, then it really wasn't an issue, right? If they're not really going to address it, it's not really an issue. But usually, I mean, I've done that, and it kind of shuts up the situation. I haven't had to do that too many times, but I've kind of had, I kind of know when the ball's in my court sometimes, and I'm like, all right, like, and I have had to learn to just be like, I'm not going to really let people just get away with this when I know that I'm right, and I know that they're wrong, and I know that they know that they're wrong, because there's always room for error. There's always room for mistakes, but I'm just kind of like, with certain people, I kind of see how they are, and I'm just like, I can see straight through this. So, that's kind of, unfortunately, some measures I've had to take, where you're just like, oh, if this is really a problem, let's sit down and talk about it. Let's draft up, like, a plan so that this doesn't happen again. I'll do this, you'll do this, a lot of times, if it's like a boss or something, they are not going to want to do this with you. They're going to be like, no. The ball is in my court still. I am not trying to find a solution to me gaslighting you. Usually they're not going to try to find a solution, and that's already a red flag. But I mean, when you think it through, a lot of times you'll notice the way that these things get handled isn't a normal way. Either they're going to push way too hard and make it really hard so that they'll silence you by firing you or something along those lines, or they're going to try to silence you by putting you down little by little in like meetings or something like that, or in the classroom or whatever that may be. But you'll notice it. I mean, it's unfortunate. Just look out for it, because it seems to be something that's coming up more and more. You know, as bosses are getting more overwhelmed, as teachers are getting more overwhelmed. You know, I mean, the new school year just started for a lot of people too. And these experiences might be coming up, you know, a lot more for people than they were ever in the past, because a lot of people don't really want to manage themselves, and a lot of people don't really feel like they have flexibility to manage themselves, and a lot of people don't really know when it's going too far. That's another thing that's a big learning experience for a lot of us, is like learning kind of when you need to kind of take a step back a little bit. Most of us, I mean, if you're like me, you will push until your body is literally just like, dude, you need to stop. And then it's like you're literally not functioning well enough to be able to like do what you got to do. And then it's like, I literally have to just stop, you know. It's like, that's literally, you know, I will get to that point usually. I know how to not get there, but I'm always just push one more day. Just push one more day. Just push one more day, you know. And so, yeah, but I mean, I hope this situation goes away. I don't see it going away because, you know, the economy hasn't even fully crashed yet. The housing market hasn't fully crashed yet. Nothing's fully crashed yet. And so we're still going to probably be dealing with these issues for a while. The changes are projected for like 2 years or so. So 2 years, we're going to have to be dealing with people not being able to manage themselves, in all honesty. But do what you got to do for yourself. You know, you do have control in these situations more than you might think. And then, yeah, if it comes to it, get out, you know, don't stay, you know, find something else. You know, you don't always have to stick it out. You can just leave. And that's probably the most extreme, hardest thing to do, but, you know, you still have that option. But I hope this is helpful. And thanks for listening.